Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to another Weird Sisters production. It's the goal of the Weird Sisters to make available interesting, informative, and creative events and presentations that inspire thought and vision within the participants. We hope that through our efforts, you may see a glimpse of a different way to live with the earth and with all of humanity. I'm proud to introduce Orion, a shining light that sparkles as bright as her namesake. She comes to us from Long Island, where she teaches at Long Island University and lives with her husband Huey. Tonight, Orion will be presenting Savone, Siberian Shaman. This is a presentation that evolved from her dissertation for her PhD, and it has grown through the years to be quite interesting and quite moving, and I'm sure you're all in for a very wonderful journey. I now give you Orion.
Siberian shamanism is so interesting is because it's so old and it's so pure. There are evidences of shamanism as early as we became Homo sapiens sapiens in the cave paintings of Lascaux and the Trofev and others in that area. And in those times there was really no impediment to the whole complex moving across the whole planet of Asia and Europe. And the reason that we can still see it, or were able to see it at the turn of the century in Siberia, is because it's such a forbidding environment. Nobody wanted to go there and bother them. So here at the turn of the century, it was possible for anthropologists to go and see living individuals actually practicing a religion and a practice very similar to what we can assume people were doing in the caves quite a while ago. That is, putting themselves into an altered state of consciousness, generally by use of a single-headed drum, probably using a very special costume that emulates animals, perhaps using the antlers of the animal, the skin of the animal, so that the human being emulates the animal and partakes of the animal powers in achieving their trance, in which they journey out of their normal consciousness, generally calling on spirit helpers to help them, and then journeying out with the help of the spirit helpers to another realm of reality, wherever that might be, to acquire knowledge and information not for themselves, but for their communities. And generally these were small communities, because this is a religion that went with the hunting-gathering economy, which is very small clans living together. And there would be one specialist per group. Could stand more than one shaman, because they're highly individualistic, very unusual individuals, and not all that easy to live with for all their genius. So you can imagine that if there was such a complex here, in the caves of France and Spain, where we have cave paintings of human beings becoming the animals, you can see that there would be no impediment for this whole complex to move all the way across the continent and down into Southeast Asia, where we see shamans there too, or used to, in Australia, and then coming down to Africa and South America and across Bering Strait into the United States, at which point shamanism comes into an agricultural environment. And when people start leaving the hunting economy and becoming agricultural, the shamanism as a technology of achieving ecstasy persists, but it becomes more like a priesthood in that once the myth is established, then the priests dress the same, enact the same rituals, and retell the same myth. This is not the case with shamans, because with shamans being so individualistic, they would acquire a very personal relationship with a unique set of spirits that no one but them, for the most part, could communicate with. So there was a very highly individual religious practice between the shaman and the spirit familiars that he or she acquired in the other world. So although there is still the quest for ecstasy, it is not as individualistic as the complex of shamanism. I'd like to tell you tonight about a very special shaman of whom we have some very good records. And this is a shaman woman whose name was Savone. And she was alive in the 1930s when Russian anthropologists went to study this phenomenon there. And they were very interested in acquiring her costume, because she was such a good and powerful shaman that her costume represented that in the opulence of its decorations. The only way a shaman can acquire a costume is by being a good shaman, because the satisfied customer, whoever is healed or had their lost things returned or their problem solved, would give the shaman a gift. The community must first of all agree that the person is a shaman. They must pass the test. Then they are entitled to have a costume. And then with subsequent healings and successful shamanizing, they would acquire beautiful metal amulets for their coats and additional garments besides the coat. Savone had not only the beautiful coat, but also a helmet to protect her against the evil spirits when she went into the underworld, where the head is extremely vulnerable. And she also acquired an apron that bears the symbols of the breastbones of a bird, because her costume was for flying. She was an upper world shaman. And she also had a platform to work on, a metal staff, mittens, gloves, the whole works. And this is very unusual. She was a very powerful shaman, and her costume is evidence of that. So for that reason, the Russian anthropologists were very interested to acquire her coat for the museum in Leningrad. And so Professor Prokofyevna, who had read about what all the other anthropologists had said about shamans, decided that she would go and check things out herself and see if she couldn't acquire the costume of this very famous shaman, whose name was Savone. And so one day she decided she would go and see who this woman was, see if she couldn't talk her out of her costume. And so the professor came, and in her very naive fashion, acted very much like a professor, and said, Savone, I understand you're a shaman. And Savone said, well, you may call me that, she said, because I know you people call me shamans, but that doesn't come from my language. I'm from the Samoyed group, an Enet shaman of the Samoyed group, and we don't have that name in our language. I am a Butod, is what they call me. And that means that I have the ability to fly to the other realms. Oh, well, thank you, said the professor. And then she said, well, I understand that not everyone can be a shaman, and it's quite an extraordinary ability. Could you perhaps tell me how you acquired your powers? And Savone said, I'm not sure you'd understand how I got my powers, but I can tell you one thing, Professor, is I didn't get it in a university. You can't learn how to be a shaman. There are no books. Nobody can really teach you. And to tell you the truth, I never wanted to be one. My mother was the great shaman here. You see that amulet up in the rafters? Because my mother made that when smallpox came to my land. Nobody here got it, because my mother was a great shaman. And it's expected that the children of the shamans will become the next great shaman. And my mother was very embarrassed that every time she approached me, I would refuse. Why would anybody want to be a shaman? Can you tell me that? Why would anybody want to go out of their mind periodically because other people wreck their lives, abuse the natural resources, fight with one another, break all the taboos, and then they want to come to me, and I should take my drum, and I should drum myself into a madness and go to other realms to deal with hostile spirits because they can't get their life together. I don't see why anybody would want to be a shaman, and I certainly didn't want to be one. And I didn't. And my mother died, and for a while, my village had no shaman. If we got sick, we had to go to the neighboring shaman, the Ket shaman. The Ket shamans are notoriously very good, but the highest compliment for any of the groups around here, the Enets, the Nenets, and the Kets, is to refer to a shaman as, that's a real Enet shaman. We have always been the best. Well, let me tell you what happened, and maybe this will help you to understand how I got my powers. One day, I was out with my friends, and it was cloudberry season, and the berries were really luxuriant that year. Beautiful, beautiful berries, and lots of them. So we went out into the field, and we were picking berries, and I saw a beautiful bush here, and I stopped to pick it, and my friends went over there, and we were talking and picking, and calling across the field to one another, and then I saw another bush over here, And I was picking these berries, and this was a very luxuriant bush too. And then I saw another one over there. And I went over here to pick the berries, and they were very beautiful, and they led me into the forest. And I realized that it was getting dark. And I called out to my friends. And I looked as far as I could see, and I couldn't see anything. It was getting dark, and I couldn't see my friends. And I called out their names. Wait for me, wait. And I couldn't find them, and I tried to retrace my steps, but you see, I hadn't gone by the directions, or there is no route into the forest. I had gone from that berry bush to that berry bush to that berry bush until I didn't know where I was. And I wandered aimlessly until I guess I fell unconscious. And the next thing I know, I was in the hut of Varuchi. Varuchi is the forest monster who has troubled my people for as long as the people can remember. And he found me there and took me to his place, a horrible, horrible, broken down shed with rotting reindeer meat all around, littered all around the ground. And he made me feed him and clean his bed and tan his hides and tend his reindeer. He was as foul and cruel as any person I could have ever imagined. I don't know how long I stayed there. But my people found me several months later, lying unconscious in the tundra. And they carried me home and they said, Savone, Savone, you must heal, you must get better. Get better from what? I was that close to death. This close to death. And I wanted nothing but to journey the rest of the way. No, 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 you are the daughter of a great shaman. We have to take you to the Ket shaman so that he can heal you. I did not want to be healed. But there they took me. And several months later, I gave birth to a dead child that had but one leg and 3 fingers, just like Varuchi. Wouldn't have been any better if the child lived. But nonetheless, my soul poured out. And then surely there was no will to live. And the Ket shaman said, you must get well. Poultices he put on me. Herbs he made me drink. Let me die. Or let me just be normal. Just heal me. Just let me be normal. And that was when he explained to me, now that this has happened to you, Savone, that is not an option for you. You will never be normal again. And the only way you will have any peace is if you become a shaman. Now I will teach you how to be a shaman. And so he did. He taught me a lot of the techniques of healing, sucking the illness out of people, how to get acquainted with the spirit familiars, to seduce a few of my own to be my helpers. And that's how I gained my powers. And so when I came back home, of course, my people tested me. They would call on me to fix their problems and to heal them when they got sick. And pretty soon they found out I was pretty good. And so they said, I guess it's about time that we got you a shaman's coat, which was a time of great honor when your community comes to that point. And the way you get your shaman's coat, you see, is you go out into the forest and you pray. And I did, I prayed. And I said, wild deer, who would be my heavenly steed, who would carry me to the upper world, come forth and show yourself so that I will know that it is you. And I opened my eyes, and there stood my doe. and with my gun, I shot her. And when we carried her home, the other women in the village tanned her hide and cut it in strips. And according to my drawings and my directions, they made me a very beautiful coat. And the next thing, of course, that I needed was a drum. For this is the way you enter trance. So out I went into the forest again. And again I prayed. Tree. Great large tree who will be the boat that carries me to the heavens. Who will be my heavenly steed, show yourself as my drum. And I wandered in the forest until I touched a tree. And I thanked it, I gave it offerings, and that tree was felled. That tree gave its life, that I could use it to be my drum, to travel to the upper realms. And that's how I acquired my costume. And then, of course, as time went on, it got more complicated because people began to give me beautiful gifts. I assume you've heard that I'm a very great shaman. And as you will see, because I am a flying shaman, my coat is a bird. It's also a musical instrument, because as I drum and I dance, the bells of the amulet terrify the evil spirits and make music to entertain my people. And so you see the bird's feet. And you see the bird's tail. And you see the bird's great wings. For I have as my helper the great Ninli. We call him the Ninli, you call him the eagle. But the great eagle comes down with his 7 wings and carries me up. And before we depart, his arms and his wings that beat the air are filled with the smaller bird spirits that fly up with us. And so I have the arm bones in iron on my arms. These are the wing bones of my birds. And when I see the hostile spirits, I protect myself. And when the evil spirits hear the clanging of all the metal on my coat, they scatter. It used to be that the shamans had a coat of 2 colors. This you can see by the black bird is my dark side. It's called the Baruchi side, the monster side. And this, where the white bird is the light side. The sun side. For the shaman, you know, walks the boundary between day and night. Bad and good. Male and female. On my apron, you see the skeleton of a bird. Because when I fly, I am a bird. And over this place where the spirits would enter your body, were it not covered, as my mirror to deflect all the hostility that comes to me in the other worlds. And of all my spirit helpers, the one who helps me most is the white she-wolf. And since she came to me the wolves have never bothered my reindeer herd. She protects me in this world and in that one. And on these pendants that hang from my belt, all of these gifts from people whom I have healed, on these fox fur puffs is where all my spirit helpers stay. I call them down, and where will they rest? They hang on here. And sometimes when I do a healing, I will take my belt off and leave it at the bedside of the child, with the spirit hanging on. And when I go to the upper world, I wear my helmet to protect my head. And on the front you can see the effigy of my 3 helpers, whose names I assume you don't need to know. And on the side you see snakes. For I am blind to this world when I am on my journey. I am blind. I see nothing except what is inside. And the snakes look out for me. And they tell me when there is danger coming. And there is much danger in that world. Of course, Professor Prokofiev wasn't satisfied to see the costume. Well, where do you go when you put your costume on? The professor wanted to know. Well, if you haven't been there, it's very difficult to explain. But I can tell you a little bit of our mythology. You see, we feel that there is a tree that joins the upper world and the underworld. And in the upper limbs of this tree are nests filled with the ancestors. And beyond that, even higher, are the high gods. And on the trunk of the tree is where all the people live. And at the roots of the tree is where there is the old grandmother, progenitor of all. She created all the people. They all came from her, and she created all of the animals. And when the people abuse the animals, abuse one another, she becomes angry. And she withholds the animals. And the people have nothing to eat. And guess who has to go down and argue with her for something to eat? Okay, I will tell you what it's like to go down and see the grandmother. Are you ready for this? You see, in the middle of my tent, this pole that represents the world tree. On its top is the high heaven. On its bottom are the roots where the great-grandmother lives. And when I begin my journey, I begin to settle into the lower realms where the spirits of the dead, where the animals live, where the worms live, where the rocks are cold and wet, where the soil is full of rotten things. I call on my helping spirit, and I prepare for my journey. And when I descend, I give my drum, for I am incapable of drumming. My spirit helper. Where is my shaman's assistant who will drum? The great-grandmother. I must walk on the razor bridge. And I have done it many times before. One does not want to fall. And be down below the rotting flesh of the other Shaman. And now, before me the great iron wall, higher than a man can climb, that no one can rise above, unless you can fly. For with my wand and the sheer power of my will, I can cut it. That walks through. And now, the place of the great-grandmother is this way. And so are the two dogs with their fangs. And I must not show my fear. And now is when the years of training must come. Come to me, strength. Come to me, come. And I take my wand and I point it at her. They back away. And then I walk into her presence. And there she is, in all her holy horror.
And what would you have now? And why do you bother me again?
Well, I said to her, well, great-grandmother, I'm sorry to be back so soon. I know that you gave me animals and very good advice last time I was here, but the people have been in some trouble, and I came to find out what is it that has offended you.
What has offended me? Nothing has offended me. What has been offended is the animals. My children whom I send to you to eat, and whose flesh you waste. And you sneak up on them and hunt them when they're trying to eat or sleep. And you do not respect one another. It is not I who's offended. It is you who must teach your people that the people are not the only ones here, that they must find their place of respect.
Well, I know that that's so. I'm certain that's so, and I promise you, I am a great shaman, and when I return to my people and I tell them what you have said, that they will observe your wishes. I know that I can make them do that.
Well, what is it you want this time, then? I'm not saying that I will give it, but what is it that you want?
Well, we really could use some animals to hunt. Our domesticated herds are diminishing. We've had some diseases this year. And we could use some caribou to hunt, or some wild reindeer if you think you could send some to the upper world for the people.
I will give you some animals. It will take 3 weeks, but I will give you animals. But you know that before I give you anything, what you must do.
I did. I had been there before. Well, you see, the grandmother has rotting filth in her hair from the destroyed souls of the animals when they return to her. They get caught in her hair, and there they rot and stink. And I knew what I must do. I know where the comb is. And I call on my helpers. And I approach her holy, stinking horror. And I comb her hair. And I wrench. And I gag. From her disgusting presence. Foul insects. The rotting meat. And the gristle and bones of animals stuck in her hair. And I must comb it until it is smooth as silk. But while I comb, I reach down ever so stealthily under her arms where she keeps in little leather bags extra animals. And I'll snatch one. Put it in my drum. And I comb, and I comb, and I comb, and then I reach again down under the little leather bag and pull out another animal and put it in my drum. There she keeps the animals as little bits of yarn, and when I take them out and I throw them on the tundra, they turn into animals. So I comb, and I comb, and I comb, and I sneak down into this little leather bag under her arm and take them. And finally, when her hair is indeed as smooth as wet sealskin, she begins to sigh, and her voice becomes as soft as a spring breeze. And she says, "You may have your animals, and I hope, great Shaman, that you will have more success with the people of your service. As I promised, in 3 weeks, you You will have those caribou, and your people will eat. But remember, if the people do not heed you, I may not listen to you if you come down here again. Goodbye. So, I left her. And the way back is so much easier. The dogs are sleeping. Have you seen? And the waiting, and the high wall, and the tunnel seems effortless. Up to the floor of the hut. And out of my drum I scatter bits of yarn and tell the people there will be food. They are never content. Couldn't you have gotten a few more? And sometimes they make me go back. But, Savone, said Professor Rogulja, you said you were flying to. Where do you fly to? You know what enlightenment means? She understood it. It means to be face to face with the ultimate, brilliant, burning, searing light. Well, how did you get there, Shaman? Want to know how I get there? Okay, Professor Prokofiev. I'll take a little journey for you. And if you want to come, you might want to hang on to my strap. Wolf. Wolf! Wolf, come with me! There. There, walk behind me. Watch me journey up. Tiny little birds, come down into my wings, for upward we will fly. Eagle, guardian of the light, sovereign of the wind, take me to your place. Down, down he comes. 7 wings flapping, soaring, flying, diving through the clouds. Cold, freezing ice. Oh, clouds of freezing ice. Oh, clouds of freezing ice. Where's the sun? Where's the heat? Where's the heat? Now the ladder of razor blades, 9 steps up. Eagle, little birds, fly with me, carry me up. Fly with me, carry me. Come on, up, fly, 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 fly. Two demons in the garden. What would you have? I have brought you some deer meat. I have brought you some deer meat, and I want for you to enjoy it, and I want you to share it with all the people of the lower heaven. And may I pass? I may pass. Woo!
A wheel of ice. Spinning a wheel of ice. And now the wind. The wind. Rainbow. Here we walk the rainbow. There.
I am in the presence of the sovereign of the winds, the maker of the ice, the light that made all that is, the brilliant, searing, singeing heat of the light. We have come to see you and all the star people because we need to know the answer to some questions. And we wouldn't be here, we would not have come if we knew the answer. And we have tried everything that we know. We have tried. And still we do not know the answer. So would you tell us? Please. I will speak to you with my breath and fan your magnificent flame. Hear my question. Hear my need. Help me. Tell me. I have heard you, and I thank you, great sovereign of the winds. Rainbow, carrying with us the great light, and imparts warmth, wisdom, confidence, direction. Down through the first heavens for all the people. You're on the line, you're on the line. The spinning wheel. The spinning wheel. The wind. The wind. Freezing clouds. Freezing down the tree and the pole of the tent and home. See what I mean? That's where I go, Professor. Far more often than I'd like to. Now, I understand you came to get this costume. Some museum? My Shaman idea doesn't solve all our problems like it used to, and you know why? Because of you people in Soviet Russia who are changing this world. And you create diseases that I can't fix. Not with all the amulets in the world. Not with all the spirit placings in the world. Not with all the drums in the world. You create diseases that only the white man's medicine can fix. So you can have this costume. Give me money to buy antibiotics for my people and take it to museum so that people will know that once people could fly